The Plume of Doom. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. You will have witnessed, if you watch the coronation, that Princess Anne was sporting a rather dashing-looking hat with a splendid plume, a feathered plume, spouting from it, which just happened to obscure the Prince of Pink Pancakes repeatedly. Victoria Ward, writing in the Telegraph, explains Prince Harry's coronation view obscured by Princess Anne's feather. The Duke of Sussex could not have made a quicker exit following his father's coronation, heading straight from Westminster Abbey to the airport. The blink and you'll miss it appearance spared the Duke from any potentially awkward confrontations with the King or the Prince of Wales. Having opted not to join the rest of the royal family back at Buckingham Palace, he will not appear in any of the official portraits that capture the moment for the history books. Pausing there, here is another consequence for Harry. He turned up, he kept his head down. Naturally, he would be commented on, but not extensively so. He was frozen out by many members of the royal family. Beatrice and Eugenie spoke with him, as did their husbands. Princess Anne sent a smile his way, although, of course, that might be akin to a shark giving you a smile, as if to say, I have you in my eye, ginger bollocks, step out of line, and there'll be worse happening to you than being obscured by my feathered plume, you traitorous little runt. However, he kept a low profile, but it shows once again the impact that his wife has had upon his relationships with those around him. His father is king. That is not something that many people can say. And instead, he's turned his back on all of that. There'll be those that will say, well, good for him. He doesn't have to. He didn't have a choice to be born into that family and all the royal protocols and conventions. But remember, he embraced all of that for so many years. And it's only since along came a spider that he has started to rebel against all of that, encouraged, of course, by her, as she puppeteers him, because it suits her purposes for him, as her lieutenant, to speak out against his family. It doesn't really ring true with regard to who he is, and at one point he will wake up and think, what on earth did I do? At the moment, he's still caught in that fog. But the fact is, he misses an opportunity to be in the official portraits. He can't get that back. It's not going to be the case that they'll say, oh yes, let's spend tens of millions of pounds giving it a rerun and organising all of the people once again to have the portraits done. He's missed his chance. Some might say, well, he won't really care. He's happy in the sunshine in Monty Shit Show, but as I've explained to you before, he isn't. He is caught in the web of the spider, manipulated, devalued. He did the right thing by attending, and he kept his head down. Although he didn't stay for long, the fact is that he did attend, and it is doubtless that as he sat there, he will have been borne by regret, regretting the fact that he found himself several rows from the front, regretting the fact as he saw his brother interacting with his father. Not because he would necessarily want to be front and centre, but he would want to be included. He is part of the family, but as a consequence of the way that he has been subjected to the manipulations, he finds himself cut out. They've done the right thing. He cannot be trusted. He has shown repeatedly poor judgment, obscured by the fog of his emotional thinking and the manipulations to which he has been subjected, capitalising upon his own arrogance that has manifested in his own narcissistic traits. But the fact is that there are so many things that he is now missing out on. And whilst he might publicly suggest that he doesn't care, he does, because this is the world from which he has come. and there will have been repeated pangs of regret, although a lot of the time they could not be seen because they were obscured by the Plume of Doom. It's clear that this was intentional, that it was known that Princess Anne, as part of the official regalia that she was wearing, would be wearing a hat. As can be seen in the pictures of those, Zara Tindall is wearing a hat, Princess of Wales is wearing a tiara, and there was another individual just diagonally behind Harry who was wearing a hat, but none of them as prominent of that as being worn by Princess Anne. And those organising the seating, which will have been signed off by King Charles, will have noted that Princess Anne would be wearing a large hat with a prominent plume, and that would obscure Harry. And thus, King Charles, signing off on this arrangement, was cocking a snook at his own son, to basically say, throughout much of the ceremony, when the cameras are trained on that section of the congregation, your face, matey boy, is going to be obscured as if a child has taken a red Crayola and scrawled across the screen. It isn't a coincidence that the Plume of Doom was deployed. It was a deliberate act sanctioned by Charles to devalue his son. Whilst Charles was pleased that Harry's attended, he needed some way, as a narcissist himself, to basically pull down Harry's pants and give him a smack bottom for being a naughty boy. Now, of course, he's not going to beckon him across to the throne whilst he's sat there and hand off the sceptre and the orb to the Archbishop of Canterbury and say, "Hey, Archbishop, hold these. I need to administer a bit of parental governance over Ginger Bollocks here." Of course, he can't do that. So instead, he asserts that control indirectly by doing so, utilising Princess Anne and the Plume of Doom to ensure that Harry is obscured. Accordingly, if he happens to look back on these pictures, he will see that he was repeatedly obscured. The article continues by explaining that the Duke, who was absent from the post-coronation family festivities, shows the deep gulf between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family. Sources on both sides indicated that the relationship between Prince Harry and Prince William in particular remains at rock bottom. The two brothers have not spoken for months. As a non-working royal, the Duke was not invited to take part in the procession back to Buckingham Palace or to appear on the balcony. Similarly, as was the case with his uncle Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, he was not permitted to wear military uniform. Instead, he wore a Dior morning suit. Most senior members of the royal family were dressed in the striking velvet robes of the Order of Chivalry, of which they are members. But again, Prince Harry was sidelined. As a Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, the appropriate insignia is a star and neck decoration, but no mantle. The Duke cut a lonely figure as he arrived at the Abbey. He was joined at the Great West Door by his cousins, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, and their husbands, with whom he exchanged a brief greeting before heading inside. If he was nervous, the Duke made a concerted effort not to show it, smiling as he processed down the nave alone, nodding to several members of the congregation and mouthing the odd hello to those he recognised. He was well aware of the seating plans long before he arrived. But his relegation to the third row, where he was seated between Eugenie's husband Jack Brucksbank and Elizabeth II's 86-year-old cousin Princess Alexandra, was a pointed nod to his pariah status. To add insult to injury, he was directly behind the Princess Royal, who happened to be wearing the rather large plume of the Blues and Royals. Onlookers joked on social media that she had worn the view-obscuring red feather on purpose. The Duke was seen smiling and chatting with his aunt beforehand. During the service, Harry chatted animatedly with Princess Beatrice's husband, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi, who provided a useful foil when the Prince and Princess of Wales walked past. After processing back out of the Abbey at the end of the service, the Duke was driven off and made a quick vehicle change before heading straight to Heathrow. Had he returned to the palace for the portraits, he would have been forced to wait for some time, as the rest of the family took part in the procession and watched the gun salute before taking to the balcony for the fly past. They were then due to get together for an informal family lunch, which again Harry misses out on, before joining official photographer Hugo Bernard to pose for portraits in the throne room and the green drawing room. The Duke was latterly invited to take part in the portrait session, although his father was aware that he wanted to get back home to see his son. His polite refusal spared Mr. Burnand the challenge of disguising family tensions as he sought to capture the joyful moment. As the rest of the royal family gathered around the king to pose in their finery, Prince Harry was already in the skies on a promise to make it back in time to give his son a birthday kiss. The Plume of Doom did its job. It obscured him, and it was purposefully done by King Charles in order to basically give his son a devaluing slap, a corrective devaluation as a non-intimate secondary source, to say, I'm pleased that you've come, but you're going to be obscured because you're a naughty boy and you need to know it. Harry finds himself on the outside. He may give the appearance of not caring, but he will. And once again, although his attendance was short, it has emphasised to him that he's very much on the outside of the royal family now, and seeking a way back in is going to be very, very difficult indeed for him. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.